Fantastic Four First Steps is the third live action iteration of the Fantastic Four property, but does this version finally give us the definitive Fantastic Four experience that we have been waiting for? Let's find out. Before I get into the review, I want to hear from you down in the comments. How are you feeling about Fantastic Four First Steps? Are you hyped for this movie? Do you not care and are burned out by Marvel movies by this point, and this is just another one on the Marvel conveyor belt for you? Let me know how you're feeling about the film if you're going to see it down in the comments. And with that, let's get into the positives of First Steps. Starting off with the biggest positive, the strongest element of this movie, it has to be the aesthetic, the production design that they have chosen to go with for this version of the Fantastic Four. The 1960s retro futuristic vibe that they have given this movie really stands out against really any other Marvel movie that we've seen up until this point. And this has to be the most distinct and unique setting of a Marvel film that we've seen in a while and probably ever. It really feels like The Incredibles, but brought to live action, which I really enjoyed that aesthetic throughout this movie. Even the costumes that they wear, like the Fantastic Four's main costume, they have those turtlenecks on that remind you of someone you would see on like a album cover of like a 1960s singer-songwriter album or something. It's really cheesy in its design, but it works and it fits perfectly with this world. And it's really funny that they're wearing turtlenecks like in space. Like it's ridiculous. But even the costume design just supports that uniqueness of how this movie feels. Vanessa Kirby also gives a really solid interpretation of Sue Storm, and this is probably the most mature version of the character that we have seen in live-action Fantastic Four versions. Watching her navigate the transition into motherhood and trying to balance that with the world-ending stakes of this movie is pretty engaging throughout the entirety of the film. And she definitely has the biggest character arc from her fears starting out as a new mother and then gaining that ability to trust as she basically becomes a different person by the end of the film. And I went into this movie expecting to hate Pedro Pascal's performance as Reed Richards, and it was actually one of the strongest performances of the film. His performance of Reed Richards really captures the intellectual side of Mr. Fantastic, as well as the heart and the humanity behind Reed wanting to save the world. Johnny and Ben are also really well realized, and they're pretty much the comedic duo of this movie. The humor in this movie is really well done, and it's different from other Marvel movies that we've seen. A lot of the times it's not laugh out loud funny, but it's still pulled off really well, and you get this sense that it's supposed to lighten the situation while not explicitly being laugh out loud funny. But about 98% of the time, it fits the characters really well, and it also feels very appropriate for the scene that we're in. So the humor was also a really well done positive of this film. Moving on to the mixed aspects of this film, the pacing is very hot or cold throughout the course of this movie. And near the first third, the sequences are really exciting, everything's rolling along, the story is very engrossing, and after that first initial 30 to 45 minutes, the first third-ish of the movie, the plot kind of starts to cool off and slow down, and then it starts to cool off and slow down even more, and it basically all but grinds to a halt, and you really feel the slowness of the pace, and not always in a good way. This being the Fantastic Four's introduction into the MCU, we need time to spend with these characters. So sometimes it is effective to slow down that pace for us to get to know who these people are and see how they interact as a family and see their development through the events of the film. But then you also remember that the plot basically revolves around this ticking time bomb kind of plotting, and occasionally the movie will remember that as well, and then the Silver Surfer will come in and kick off the next big plot development for the story to continue, and it just feels like it becomes very sluggish through major sections of the film. And about when the Silver Surfer comes in again is when you know that something is going to happen and we're going to move forward now. And that just felt really, really weak in terms of the pacing and how that was structured throughout the film. Speaking of weak points, what are the negatives of Fantastic Four First Steps? Unfortunately, the biggest negative of this movie is the quality of the plot itself. The plot does not hold up to scrutiny. Once you leave the theater or turn off the movie and you start to think about things, it starts to break down very quickly. And I was taken out of the film multiple times when certain things would happen and the movie was asking me to take for granted too much for it to be believable. To be fair, the movie did suck me back in a number of times and re-engage me and get back my attention, but then another plot development would kick in and I would be back in my head disengaged, wondering how would this even work and why did this character make this decision? And that happened multiple times throughout the film, and it really never got back to the first initial opening and third of the film where I was totally bought in. I wish that had been my experience through the entire movie, but unfortunately there were too many unbelievable plot choices that just kept me confused throughout the runtime. So what's the verdict on Fantastic Four First Steps? Before I give you my final thoughts and score, go down into the comments below and let me know how are you feeling going into this film. If you have seen it, let me know what did you think of Pedro Pascal's performance. Were you surprised? Were you disappointed? I was personally very surprised by how good of a job he did, frankly. But let me know down in the comments, are you going in hyped? Are you going in not hyped? And what did you think, if you've seen it, of Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic? Overall, this is the strongest Fantastic Four movie that we have ever gotten, and this is also a really solid and fun Marvel film as well. If you want to go see a really solid Marvel movie, I would recommend this. If you just want a really fun summer movie experience, I would recommend this movie as well. And it's going to be a 6.5 out of 10 for Fantastic Four First Steps. If you want to know how this movie compares to Superman that came out a few weeks ago, you can go watch my review for the new Superman film right here. Thank you so much for watching.